Very professional. Look at that. Look at the production quality right there. That took days of work just for those 12 seconds. Amazing, Catherine. Absolutely amazing.
That is really... Catherine, how did you make that? If you don't mind my asking.
Hello,
Catherine's a wizard.
BOC. Hello, BOC, and anybody else watching. I have my co-host with me today, Liam McAllister, and I have our special guest, GerudoKing, Stephen Janowski. How's everything going, Stephen?
Everything is okay. I just woke up maybe like half an hour ago. So I'm drinking the little protein shake. I'm just getting ready for the day.
Cheers.
Nice.
I've got the coffee.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to drink. I just have a koala here. But that's okay. I can mute my mic when I decide to devour the koala.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So we're going to talk about your religious past. If you had a religious past,
Yes.
did you grow up in Christianity? And we're going to talk about how you came into the truth
Okay.
as well. So let's talk
All
about
the
your
good
religious past. What's that, Liam?
I said all the good questions, the fascinating questions. We're going to delve deep into the character and the mind of Stephen Janowski. All the secrets are going to be revealed here live on Catherine's channel right now. We're all going to know.
Yeah, 100% of them. Yeah. Okay. So you want me to answer?
Yeah. Tell us a bit about your experiences in Christianity. And
Okay.
what age were you when you came into Christianity? Was it right from birth or?
No. So I was about 4 years old when I went to a Baptist school for the first time. I went there for pre-K. It was called Calvary Baptist. It's over. It's still like maybe like a mile away from me now. I cannot say I know for sure my dad's thought process on why he put me in there, because I think by the time he placed me into a Baptist school, I think even at that time he already knew some facet of the truth. Like he knew already that that I think he might have even known Martin Zender by that point. He might have. I think he knew about L. Ray Smith. I think he knew about a few other people, and he was up all night. You know, he would be doing what I ended up doing a few years ago, just like playing chess and learning the truth online and studying, finding random stuff. And so I can't say for sure I know why he put me in there, but I was there in pre-K. I was there in kindergarten. I was there from grades 1 to 7. So I spent a good 9 years inside of a Baptist church.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so it wasn't hardcore, like you go there every Sunday either. Like, you know, you get up every morning and you'd have to go there. They would have Bible classes, you know, say like in first and second and third grade, they would put these little flashcards with like little paintings and pictures of like, here's Satan as an angel, and then here's him falling, and then like here's like they for some reason they painted heaven as like this weird like cube, you know, like it was like this like, have you ever seen a picture of how they perceive heaven? It's like a
That
big
was some weird ass school.
they're crazy. It was like a 3-dimensional like square, and they just like said, this is heaven. And I was like, that looks kind of small. And what is it, just like hanging in space somewhere? Like, why is space bigger than heaven? I don't know. But they they put you through that, whatever that is. And thankfully a lot of it went in one ear and out the other with me, for good reason. Part of it was because throughout the preschool into first and second grade, my dad would say things like, "Hey, you know that hell is nonsense, right? Like they're just kind of like, you got to let some of that stuff go. You can't talk about some of that stuff." So even whether he planned it this way or not, it was a blessing that I got to see the Christian lie as I grew up, and then have that contrasted with what I had at home.
Yeah.
I will even say I've said this on a few streams before, but one of my favorite parts of being in the, like, understanding some random parts of the truth. I remember being in third grade, and there was an after school, like an aftercare teacher. I would have to be in the aftercare program for like an hour or something before my dad could pick me up. Uh, he what they would do is they would sometimes they would give you the Bible, if you want to look at something or if you have a question about something. So one day I was talking with my dad, and he told me that God didn't take a rib from Adam, that it was something else, and he never told me what that was because it was in third grade. But I was like, okay, so I guess what my dad says is right because these guys sound crazy and he doesn't sound crazy, So I was like, okay, and so I go to school the next day, and I'm in that after school class, and they hand me the Bible, and I'm like going over to my friends, and I go like, this is wrong. This is not true. It's not a rib.
Wow. What an interesting what an interesting perspective, because your dad knew a lot about the truth, and then you go into a Christian school and then you're reading it from the Bible, which is probably like the King James, and then you'd be like, well, actually, hell, that's actually false. And then so did your teachers know this?
The teachers hated me. So the after school teacher, she caught wind of me saying like, that's not a rib. And so she, bless her heart, like she doesn't know any better, but like she went up to me and she was like, Stephen, can you I know you're like a good reader. You can read. It's right here. It says rib. I was like, nah. I was 9 years old. I was just like, no. And my dad picked me up that day, and there was like a mix. I remember the look on his face clearly. He was like holding my little hand on the way out, and he was like trying not to laugh too much, but he was also trying to like be stern because he was like, no, Stephen, you can't do that to the Christians. But he was like, he was kind of like half laughing. He was like, no, we teach him other things at home. And then we like, he didn't know what to say. So we're on the way out. And he didn't like punish me or anything, obviously, but like I think it was around that time where he also explained to me what grace really was, which I said it in my live, which you guys recorded, the live. Oh my gosh, the conference, the Seth's conference. My dad just explained it to me perfectly, like what grace really was. He said, look, Stephen, you are going to sin this much in your life. Okay, well, that's a bummer. And he goes, but here's the good side. God's going to have this much grace on you. It's like, okay, well, what if I like sin this much? Like, well, God's going to have that much grace.
Yeah.
And so I took like my little like 5-year-old hand, and I was like, well, Dad, will it ever look like this? And he made a little show of it. He was like, no, I don't think it's ever gonna look like that. I was like, oh wow, okay. And I got it. I was like, okay. So even that young, like I didn't know like, Romans 3, I didn't know Romans 4, I didn't have the salvation of all down. I didn't know about the old humanity. I didn't know about the cross of Christ and how that actually, the intricacy of how that worked. But like, I knew that grace was a thing. I knew that was at the center of what God was doing. So,
right. So it sounds like you were pretty heavily involved in Christianity then. What sort of social activities did you get yourself involved in?
Apart from the school.
Yeah.
I went soul winning with them one time. And that's one of the only times that I really went into like a Christian communal thing. That's not true. There was one other thing which I can explain in a second, but I was way too young for it, so I might not even remember. There was one thing. It was soul winning, I hated it. It was like the worst experience of my life. And if it had been anything good, I would have wanted to go back. So it's good that God did that to me.
Yeah. Did you
They-
hand out any tracts or anything?
Yep.
Yeah.
People, I knocked on the door of the people and they were so annoyed. Like they were like, God damn it. We have this like 9-year-old like giving me like this thing. I don't care. They're like, one of them was smoking a cigarette and like, and I don't know. I was just like kind of hit with like this, like, people just don't care.
Yeah.
And I already knew that what the Christian message was kind of stilted. I didn't know to what extent it was stilted, but I knew it was stilted. So I was already like, is it such a bad thing that they don't care? I mean, the guy's just enjoying his life. He's smoking a cigarette. He's probably going to go in there and, talk to his wife and kids. I don't know. So I don't know. I hated it. And I looking back on it, I see how that was used. They would have you go soul winning for like maybe an hour, and then they would take you over to the mall where you could go hang around with your friends for an hour. So it was kind of like a risk reward type of system.
Yeah.
But like, it was like, you do this for me, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and it was very subtle, but
yeah. How did you view the Christian God? Did you think he was like angry or a tyrant or, like just mean or whatever?
How was your relationship with God just in general? Because obviously you weren't really in Christianity, although you were in their groups and things, but because of your dad, you have a better understanding of God. So there's the Christian God, and then there's the God that your dad is telling you about. So there's clearly a difference.
Well, part of the reason that I was leaning towards my dad is because, I mean, I didn't know what, like, I didn't know. This might sound weird to say, but like looking back, I didn't really know, like, have a complete view of what love was. I didn't have a full understanding of that. It's 9. So I thought the Old Testament, like, God that they were showing off was kind of feeble. Just, I didn't, I guess I look now, I guess I see him as angry and vindictive, but at the time I just kind of saw him as lame. I saw him as not really worth pursuing. And I found it funny that so many people seem to be wasting their time. I even laughed at them. Like, it got bad. The last year that I was in that Baptist school was probably the worst. I just kept getting in trouble, like, every week. If it was, a lot of the time, it was just because, like, I'm wearing the wrong belt or wearing the wrong socks or something. Like, they were really obsessed with, like, dress.
Seriously.
I even got suspended once because of it. My dad was pissed because I had to stay home. But it did get really bad in some ways, in some other ways, because I remember I was starting to interrupt their Bible class with stupid random stuff. Like, they would be like teaching about, like, this important story of David and Goliath. Then I didn't have the context. I didn't have the value. I didn't have the story for it. They just kind of seemed to be like cherry picking Bibles, the parts of the Bible. And I was like, you guys don't do this with, like, Percy Jackson. You guys don't, like, start reading chapter 13 of Percy Jackson and then go into chapter 18 and go back into chapter 2. So why are you doing it with this book, even though it's clearly a book?
Yeah.
So I just started making fun of it. Like, I would raise my hand, and instead of asking something insightful, I would just be like, yeah, I love chicken nuggets or something like that. Like, just say the most random stuff. It would just, then the class would laugh. Even sometimes the teacher would laugh, but he could tell. Like, I remember he said something to me one day. He pulled me into his back office, and he was like, "You really interrupt my classes a lot. Are you saved?"
Wow. And how old were you?
I was 12. It's not the first time I was asked that question at that church, but I was smart enough to know that anytime anyone asked me if I was saved, I just go, yes, I'm saved. And he said, that's really interesting, and I believe you're saved. It's like, thanks. No, he said, I believe that. He had kind of a southern drawl. He said, I believe that, and he said,
Of course he did.
and he said, Stephen, you're weird. and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way. You're just different from the other kids. They're swimming with the stream, and you're swimming the other direction. He did, and I didn't take it as an insult because he wasn't saying it in an insulting way. Like he genuinely meant it. He was like, he said like that I was different, and he even said he respected that. But he just said, but for the sake of what we're doing now, I just need you to be a little quieter in class. And I think from that point on, I was quieter with him. But
yeah,
there were other classes where I mean I was just a little shithead. I was flipping off teachers at one point.
Whoa.
Yeah, I damaged school property at one point too. Like it wasn't fun for them. It was kind of fun for me. But
Of course it was.
yeah, but it was getting crazy.
Did you go through any strange experiences in Christianity? Like
Spiritually
talking in
experienced.
tongues. I mean, that was kind of a strange experience that you talked about then, but like really strange, like talking in tongues and that kind of thing.
I don't
I
have
guess
any.
it wouldn't have been a lot in the Baptist churches because it's not.
Yeah. No, it wasn't so much strange in terms of. I would argue that Baptists are like the most deceptive. So I wouldn't say things like they were speaking in tongues or anything so crazy. I remember being. I remember the social pool. I'll say this: there was a social pool, and I mean pool, behind wanting to go up to the altar and pray. It wasn't like I would go and do that sometimes, so I wouldn't do that because I genuinely felt like God was there and not in the pew or something like that. I knew that God was smarter than that. I didn't even know like the logistics of it. It was just like, why is God up here and not down there? But whatever. But I went up to the church pulpit sometimes just because why not? You know, I don't even have like an excuse for it. I just was going up there.
Did you drink the wine and the wine or
No.
the wine and
No.
have the bread and that kind of thing? Did you get baptized or
I
anything
think
like
that's
that?
Catholic, but I think they tried to baptize me once, and I was like, one weird thing. I remember being in a school play, but it was like about Jesus, and it was kind of like brainwashy.
So what kind of things were they getting you to do during the play?
Just I had to play a robot that went back in time. Yeah.
What's that got to do with Jesus?
It was just a couple of kids that were just like screwing around in like an old shop one day, and they like go back in time to go like see Jesus, and I was playing a robot, and I don't remember why I was playing a robot, but I was playing a robot, and so what we saw was the story of Jesus play out on stage, and it was like the cheesy like brainwashed version of Jesus. Like of course the pastor had like an extra 15 minutes of like, and now come down to the altar type of thing. So it was weird.
Did you dabble in any other religions apart from Christianity, or think about being an atheist or anything like? I suppose. Well, you never know.
Not that I know of. I thought about not caring after, because there was just such a pool with the Baptist church, and then there came a point when I was getting to be like 11 or 12 where I was like, I've just kind of been taking my dad's word for it. Is that? I mean, because my dad's just a guy too, so.
I think if he was a Christian, then it would be a bad thing. But luckily for you, he's not. He's actually the truth.
Literally. But I was sitting. I mean, at the time, I didn't really have a proper understanding of that, so I was just like, I don't know why I should be listening to my dad, and I don't know why I should be listening to the Baptist church, and so who cares? I literally like I think I just slid into playing video games, watching Quantum Leap, and just calling it a day.
And how old were you when you were doing this? So this must have been after the preschool, right?
Yep. I must have been 12 or 13 by then.
Okay.
Because it was like a good decade of just Baptist church nonsense, and contrast that with bits of the truth from my dad, but I didn't have like a central factor, like pulling it all together and making it all click into place and make sense. I didn't have the salvation of all. I didn't have. I've heard the general phrase in my house, like everything's okay, everyone's going to be okay, but I never knew what that meant. I didn't know how to respond to that. Like, what do you do with that information? I mean, I don't know. That, and my mom was like shaky with it. Like, she seemed to be understanding what my dad was saying, but then she also seemed to be kind of taking her own path, and I was very confused. I didn't really know like what to think then, because now one person that I respect is going off on this tangent, and then another person I respect is going off on that tangent, and then on top of that, I had my brother, and my brother was too young to understand 80% of that. And I was like, well, if he doesn't care and he's fine and he's just living his life, why can't I just go do my life, go do whatever? So yeah, I started saying, well, screw it, I'm going to pursue what I want to pursue. I want to go play, like my me and my dad, like, we moved away from talking about scripture as often, and we would play like old video games and watch old movies and stuff like that. Like we would watch Quantum Leap and go play Super Nintendo games, stuff like that. I love that stuff. That's, to this day, I mean, I've even been doing it on my channel. I love playing like old video games. That stuff's fun to me.
So this is when you left Christianity,
yep,
pretty much, and just did your own thing for a while. How long did that last until you came into the truth?
So one of the craziest things during that period of time of getting to the truth was realizing that people are not monsters. That's the biggest thing for me that I had to really understand. Because in 8th grade, I went to a public school for the first time, which for my private school mind was so radically different. You couldn't say hell without getting in trouble by the Baptist school teachers. But here you could kind of dress however, you could pretty much say whatever. And I come from a majority minority area, so I'm hearing like the N-word, the F-bomb just gets dropped like every other minute. Totally new world, whole new world for me. And for the first week of middle school, I was dead silent. I was just like, oh my God, like, how do I even talk about this? But I am observant. So like one of the things I noticed was that like the kids themselves, they're not evil, they're not the way that the Christian church like painted them out to be. They're just people. They're just doing their thing. They're just, I mean, they just talk a different way. That's all. Like, it's not that serious. And even my dad would say like, like, you just don't want to hear certain things coming out of the mouth of a child. And it's like, I get that, but they're not like doing something wrong. And some of the ones that cuss the most are some of the smartest ones. I became friends with a big guy that was just really smart, dropped the F-bomb all the time, but he was a genius and it's a pleasure to talk to. So yeah, I just like realizing that like the way that people are growing up will dictate their adulthood made me not only feel more sympathy for the adults, but of course feel more sympathy for the kids that I was around, because it was like, well, we're all just kind of getting pushed around by our environments. We're not actually like, it's not like half of these kids chose to come here, and half of these kids are only getting, whenever they get food, it's only from this school in some regards. Like, there are kids that I knew that would have to live that way. And I just, it changed everything for me, because now I'm thinking, well, God, why? For one, because I haven't even at this point, like, it's not like I left Christianity so I stopped believing in God. I still believe in God. I just had no clue what the hell he was about. And I guess you just get to this weird point where like I'm sitting there like I remember I would be walking. I wouldn't be walking home. I would be walking to the library after school, but I would be walking to the library and I would be like, what's the point of any of this? What's your deal? Why am I doing the same thing every day? Like, even I get it, like I'm supposed to get a degree and like go to work in some field or something, whatever it is, but like, why? What's the point?
Yeah.
And
So,
oh, sorry.
so were most of your family in Christianity?
Yeah. So I couldn't even talk to them about it because I was sitting there like my aunts, my uncles, especially my grandfather, my dad's dad is so deeply rooted in Christianity. If he heard half the things, no, I'd say 95% of the things that I've said on any of these streams with you guys, I would be excommunicated, and I mean that wholeheartedly. When he gets mad at people, he excommunicates them. So I would probably be out, and I probably have been put out in a number of ways, but that's another story. By the time where I was going with that, by the time I get to 10th grade is when I really got hit with the truth, and
Yeah.
that was because like around like in 9th grade I kind of spent relaxed, it was with friends. There wasn't anything crazy. It was just like there just wasn't anything to really. I don't know. It felt like stagnant. It was just like I spent that year just going through again high school. God, why am I doing this? And I kind of got used to no response. So I was like, well, okay, I guess if he wants to answer me, if he's the creator of all, he has a right to not answer me. And then if he's the creator of all, he has the right to answer me if he wants, And my dad did say everyone's going to be okay. And I haven't heard really better message than that, even though it's kind of like simple. I guess it's not really, explained very well, but whatever. I guess if everyone's going to be okay and God can answer me whenever, then I should be okay, and I'll just go do whatever I got to do. I was like really heavily trained on being in the law. The Baptist church, I guess the weirdest thing I would say is the Baptist church really tried to push that on me. So I never really got into the law because my dad would go the opposite direction and would go, no,
Yeah.
you really don't have to be subject. I mean, yeah, obviously don't go kill somebody, like don't go steal things. But it's not even that it's a horrible thing that you'll get in trouble for. It just doesn't make any sense. Like it logically, why would you do it? It just, what's it going to get you in the position you're in right now? And I thought about it like that. I was like, oh yeah, well, it literally won't benefit me anything in my life. I mean, I guess and I had stolen things before. Like I was a little klepto for a short period of time. And I learned my lesson. It's like, okay. But what really hit me in 10th grade was learning the truth through something that happened in my family, which was we found out that my mom had been cheating on my dad for about 3 months at that time with a man that she had known for almost 2 years. So she's a big workout fan. She loves to work out and do that stuff daily. And she was in an online group, not so dissimilar from us here, and she fell for someone in that group. So she, whenever she could, when she had the time, she headed down to Florida and slept with the guy. Came back up, and my dad found out about it, and it was right about there that I realized that's where like I saw my parents, like not as my caretakers, but like as people, as human beings. That was a big moment. But I remember it just the moment that happened. My mom pointed out that it was because of a number of things that I won't go into related to their marriage. And she had valid points with those statements and arguments that she was making. And then my dad, who knew very well those valid points, also made the valid point that doesn't mean you should cheat. There's no excuse for that. You should just cut it clean and simple and go, not drag it out in this weird, deceptive kind of way. So neither of them were in the right. And I remember my dad, he came to the resolve, like in that moment, that he wanted to fight for the relationship, which just it's not that itself was a bad decision, but it really threw a heavy emotional burden on the house for like a long time, almost a year. It would be two weird extremes. Like we would either have a really extremely negative disposition because I would get to school and I would be like, well, fuck, I got to go home in 8 hours and I got to deal with nonsense and shouting and screaming and whatever. I remember going back and I would get home and sure enough, there's the screaming, kicking, shouting. And it was that way for maybe like a month or two. And then the school year ended and I got hit hard with like the summer period where I'm just at home constantly. So I see them they get home from work and I saw something even worse than that negative extreme, which was a fake positive extreme where they would realize that, oh yeah, hey, maybe we're like scarring our children by like shouting all the time like this. So they would move into like a fake positive and everything's okay, guys. No, everything's fine. Come down here, play some old video games with me, watch some movies. Let's go talk about scripture for a little while. It all fell flat. It all felt fake. None of it felt real. And me and my brother, I mean, we started sneaking out to our friends' houses. Why not? We could get away with anything. Literally, my dad was too caught up in trying to fix his relationship, and my mom was too busy not caring enough and wanting to go be with another guy. So me and Tim, we were like, we see where this is going. And we would even be put on blast for it sometimes by our dad. He would even come in sometimes, and I don't blame him for this, but he would get mad at us for just not caring, because he's like, oh, you guys just don't care about what happens in the house anymore. And he would sometimes take out whatever was happening emotionally with him, with my mom, out on me and Tim. He would try and like pull me and Tim and show us like the situation sometimes, and he would go like, no, I want you guys to see what's happening here. And for as much as I understood why he was trying to do that, it was like, I don't need to be a part of that. That's not necessary. So all that to say, while I'm going through all that and seeing all that, experiencing all that, I'm slowly getting like more and more depressed and more disinterested in life, because I was sitting there, it was like, yeah, I get it. Like, you're the creator of the universe. You can answer whenever you feel like it. But at the same time, you're really making this like miserable for me. I don't know why. I have zero clue why. And I'm kind of over it. And I even, after a year of it, I was even feeling borderline suicidal. I was at the end of myself. I was like, I can't talk to my brother anymore. My brother was a totally different person. Within the span of a year, he just changed completely. I didn't feel like I knew my dad anymore. My mom was leaving at some point. She just was like, nope, we're gonna get divorced. And she was like, going to Iowa. And I didn't want to talk to her as a result. It's like, no, but just leaving. I remember I was really close one day. Like if there's one day I remember particularly, it was a means, a motive, an opportunity. I had it all, and if I just continued on that train of thought, um, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys right now.
Yeah. So tell us more about how you came in to be in the body of Christ.
So it would have been from that moment, from your lowest moment onwards.
Mm-hmm.
That moment, I saw a video by our brother Martin Zender, and it was how I came to believe in the salvation of all.
Mm-hmm. How did you find his site? Did anybody tell you about it, or did you just?
Did it just pop up onto your recommended, or was it your dad? Or
It was God. No, Martin Zender. He was in our channel or in our house. Like, you know, he was a household name even for a long time. Like I said, my dad. By the time I was 4 or 5, he was already looking into some things on the truth. So he was looking into it, and he eventually came across Martin. I think right when Martin was starting, or maybe he was a few videos into his Revelation series.
Mhm.
He had a long, like 800 video series. I remember my dad, he would get up every morning, watch a new one, watch the next one, watch the next one. So he was a household name in our house for a while. My dad loved the videos so much, he even named our dog after him. He was like, we're going to name the dog Zender. It's like,
Oh,
okay.
really?
Yeah, we have a dog. We had a
what
dog.
an honor! What an honor!
Yeah, it was, yeah. Martin said, yeah, he's calling me a dog. No, it was really like that. That was what it was. And I thought to myself, like in that moment, and I was about to just finish. It was like, I don't know what it was. I think it was just like looking through YouTube or something. I was subscribed to Martin, but I never really like watched his videos. I just saw this video, like how I came to believe in the salvation of all. It was like on his channel, because I was kind of I will admit, maybe part of me was just kind of like making fun of God. It was like I was a little, at that point I was definitely upset. I was in despair and all that. So I was just like, I was just, very honestly, I said, well, fuck you then. I mean, I'm just, what's the point of me even being here? I don't even care. I mean, and you've got teachers, good people saying shit like, oh yeah, salvation of all. Yeah, bullshit. And
Yeah.
I was arguing with them in the stupidest way for like an hour. And I remember I was crying. And I eventually saw, I was like, yeah, salvation of all, whatever. I clicked on it. And then I was crying for a different reason, because I was like, well, shit, yeah, that makes sense. You have to have the bad before you can experience the good. And I understood that immediately, because it was kind of a mix of things, like all the games I had played, all the movies I had watched, like they all kind of portrayed this balance of good and evil. You know, I loved like the weirder movies, like the David Lynch, the Twin Peaks stuff growing up. I loved the Pulp Fiction, the Field of Dreams, the Terminator. Things have to get worse before they get better, and that's the only way that you can tell a good enough story for someone to learn. And coming to grips with that, and I didn't, I like it. It was a 20-something minute video. It changed completely. And later that night, I was looking at his website, and I found a weird video, or a weird article called like the eons. It's like, what the hell are the eons? What is this? And because you never read eons in a Bible before, you know, like what is this? And eventually, like, I saw an article on it, but it was too hard for me to understand. You know, it had already been a long day, so I was like, I need a video of this. So I go to YouTube, I type in the eons, Martin Zender, and I found a 3-part series by a guy named Waylon Dobbs. It's on his channel.
Yeah.
And it's a 3-part series on the eons, and Martin broke it down perfectly for a 10th grader to understand it. Well, I was in 11th grade at that point, but it broke it down perfectly for me to understand that. And I saw those videos that changed everything for me. It was so vitally important to my understanding. I was like, whoa, there's a beautiful time set list to this. There's a whole structure and an order and a carefully plotted out course to every little minute intricate part of life. That's amazing. The fact that there's a plan from the very beginning and it's told from the end changes everything. That blew my mind. And it got so like I started reading like everything that Martin had. I started like it was so important to me that I started literally writing down everything that he had said in that Eons video. Like I literally wrote it down in a Word document. I wrote down all 3 parts of it, and I showed it to my brother and I read it to him, and he was like, well, "That makes sense."
Yeah.
So, not only was I being shown the truth, but then God used it to show my brother the truth.
That's awesome.
And my dad already knew the truth. And I knew my mother, as terrible as cheating was, knew the truth. So I just got hit with this big moment that there are 4 believers in this house. They're not being separated because it's what they want. They're being separated divinely. God is going to place them where they need to go, and or place all of us where we need to go, which we have. We've kind of parted our ways, but we all have shared the truth in other ways to people. And just realizing that we were literally, I could tell we were attacked spiritually. We were given, or God like literally used that influence to bring us to a better understanding of him. And I knew I didn't deserve it because I was the one sitting there saying, "Fuck you, God." So I was sitting there salting. And then he gave me that. And I was like, oh my God, I can't understand. Because if anything, in my mind, it would be, I'm in your debt, God. But he just shares something with me as though he was in my debt. I was like, it was the most humbling, one of the most humbling moments of my life.
So Martin played a part in you coming into the truth, and your dad. Who else was involved in you coming into the truth?
So that was the beginning of it. So you understood the salvation of all in the eons. But obviously, as we all know, our progress in the truth will progress over time. So was there any big revelations, like the Trinity is false, things like that? Was that all at once, or did it come in waves?
What's funny is that I always knew the Trinity was nonsense. That was something that my dad had shown me way earlier. He had always kind of discounted hell. And I figured, well, if he thinks everyone's okay and some people are going to be burned for all eternity in their mind, I think that doesn't make any sense that people would be burned for all eternity. I remember even in like second or third asking this question, I remember kind of like talking to my friend in the bathroom one day. We were just like, I was like, hey man, Jesus died on the cross to save everyone, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, then why are we in church asking to get saved? I'm in second grade asking this question. So I know it wasn't my question to ask. It was not. It was completely God. So I was like, what's going on here? And it was the stupidest thing. And he said, well, that's a good question. Maybe like we should ask the teacher about it. And I was like, no, because they're part of the system. They're going to ask stupid questions in response to me, and they're going to make it sound like I'm an idiot when I just asked you a very normal thing that anyone would be asking. That's why there are people that don't believe in God anymore. And that was that. I mean, but as for something like free will, I guess that was also something that I just kind of lost over time. Like that was something that, like, especially going into public school, even then, like I knew, okay, I don't know what God's plan is, but I know that God like has to have a plan if he's the supreme, the way that my dad talks about him, then he has to be in control of things, because he wouldn't leave idiots like us in control of things. He's smarter than that. So what's he got going on? So I don't know. I just never really believed in free will either. Immortality, the soul, none of that stuff really like took root.
Okay.
I think
That's
the
good.
word.
That's
Yeah.
good. So, what was the first demonic doctrine to go for you?
It was probably the Trinity. The Trinity was the one that came closest to having its hooks in me. But I was like, I kind of always like I said, I realized it was nonsense when my dad said it was nonsense. It was like, well, and again, he asked the same logical question that you guys ask very regularly when concerning the Trinity. Hey, you're my son, right? I was like, yeah. And he said, so are you me? No.
Yeah, no.
And just like that, it was done. And the only reason I cite that one as, even though it dropped quickly, it was the one that was prevalent in my mind, is because it's the only one that didn't have a straight answer to me. Because like when I learned about the eons, I realized, oh yeah, okay, so from here, now I have to know about how and why hell is bullshit, because this is important if I'm going to be learning this, or if I'm going to even be sharing this with anyone. Which, by the way, part of the reason I wanted to become a teacher and start teaching people was because I had that experience of showing the eons. I printed out a 5-page like transcript essentially of Martin's art series on Wayland Dobbs' channel, and I read it to him, and that was kind of like the moment where I was like, I want to teach people in Christ. I want to teach people on Christ. And I knew I had to start absorbing knowledge like a sponge. So one of the things I had to learn was hell. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Sheol, Hades, Gehenna, that makes sense. That's easy to break down. The one that was tougher for me was the Trinity, because it didn't have such a simple breakdown in my mind, even though, because Martin could point out, here's a few verses here that don't actually prove the Trinity, that people say they do, and then here's a couple of other verses that prove the Trinity, though, or disprove the Trinity, though some people say they don't, and yada yada. But then you could go over, and by this point I was starting to learn about Enoch very slowly. I was like, I didn't even know the concordant literal. Like, guys, I had no clue. I had no idea. So I was just starting to come to an understanding of that, and I didn't really have like other people that you would look at, the L. Ray Smith. I had seen Drew Costin in the chats of Martin's videos sometimes. I saw that he had a blog, so I've seen a few things that he was doing. So I was looking at a few things, and I was noticing, and Clyde Pilkington as well. I actually, this is something I made in 11th grade.
Are the dead really? Wow, that's really cool. Yeah.
This was, I didn't make this specifically. I made the binder, but the binder, had some like personal letters in the front, and then like I broke down. There's one, free will.
And how old were you when you made this?
Maybe about 12th grade. After about a year of studying, I studied all this stuff.
So what is 12th grade? Because I'm not
That's
American.
like the last year of
I was like 17 going on 18.
Okay.
So I was learning this stuff, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I was learning from Clyde Pilkington in a few ways. And so it was very valuable stuff. But they would all present like different verses and different perspectives on why the Trinity is nonsense. So I kind of knew, like, if these guys have the truth, the Trinity is nonsense. I just don't know if I could write an essay on it, So that's the only reason I would say, like, it was kind of a little tougher for me to really break down why that's a problem. But then there was one verse that I had read one day, and it said, Christ was roused through the glory of the Father. And I was like, that settles it. It's pretty definitive. It's pretty clear. Yeah. There was like that one.
What was the last demonic doctrine for you to go?
Yeah, probably the Trinity.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was probably it. I mean, I almost wouldn't say like, because most of my life, the reason I was going into the old stuff was dropping those demonic doctrines, because there were so many opportunities for those to get hooked into me throughout. I mean, again, a decade inside of a Christian church, I had every opportunity to, go to church on Sunday. Even my dad was like, "Look, if you ever want to go ahead. You're free to go. But I'm just telling you, the reality of the situation is that they're not correct about this, this, and this." So, okay.
Mhm.
And so I never felt like going either. It's a Sunday morning. I don't want to go to church. I want to go play video games or go to a friend's house or go play outside or something. Better things
Yeah.
to do. So I mean, I had every opportunity to go into that. I didn't. Um, so I would say that experience was the demonic doctrines being like weeded out of me, because as I'm staying away from it, I'm looking at it for what it is, because I'm not like focused on it and
Mhm.
dwelling on it. I was just kind of like doing my own thing. You asked earlier, like, were there any other religions I considered? I guess the closest thing would be Greek mythology, and it's
Mhm.
a little silly think of actually like really thinking about it, because I had read like the Percy Jackson books, and I was like,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, these guys are pretty cool. And then I went and looked into Greek mythology more, and I was like, oh, these guys are pretty crazy. And then I moved out of that. Um, and I realized, if there's any God, the only God I want to be real, obviously, is the one that actually cares and the one that loves unconditionally. Um, the only one that was presenting that at the time was my dad. It's like, okay. Um,
Mhm.
but then, to see other teachers finally, like in like 10th, 11th, 12th grade, to finally come to grips with the fact that there are other teachers that were teaching this, and it wasn't just my dad like indoctrinating me into something. There's
Yeah.
a number, like there's Martin, there's really Enoch, Clyde Pilkington, Drew Costin, like these teachers that know what they're talking about, that
Mhm.
and talk to you about the truth, and break it down so simply. Especially again, Martin and Enoch were the biggest ones for me. And
Mhm.
I just knew, like, I knew that I wanted to do something in Christ. I just didn't know what exactly it was at the
Yeah.
time. So I hit 12th grade, and right when I turned 18, that was 2020. That was when COVID hit. So during that period of time, that year-long period of time, I had the opportunity to just, write. I started writing a couple pages a day, and I thought at the time, like, I don't exactly have enough of an education on Paul's Evangel yet to really write in Christ, especially because I was even intimidated, because I'm sitting there looking at people like Martin. He's doing it for 30 years, and I was
Yeah.
sitting there like,
Yeah.
that guy's been doing it for 30 years. What could a guy like me have to offer to present anything or do anything? And um, I was kind of down on myself. I did have depression by that point, so it was kind of circulating through
Yeah.
a while, and I just kind of have to deal with it. And
Mhm.
I didn't have a proper way to deal with it. Part of the reason of looking into scripture was to get out of that, because I was sitting there like, you know, I, I I don't feel like rolling out of bed in the morning. To this day, there are days where I'm like, I have to take a half hour before I can get out of bed in the morning. It's just not changed. Um, and there have been ways that it's calmed down in these last year or two, but even still,
Yeah.
yeah, annoying. But yeah, so I started writing, but I didn't start writing literally on Christ. I started writing my testimony. I started writing about my friends who I grew
Mhm.
up with, the girl I fell for in 10th grade. I started just kind of telling my story, and walking whoever would ever read it through that experience of being in high school, coming to realize the truth, and then through a parent's fighting and divorcing and kind of the household falling apart. So I just wrote about that during COVID. I wrote that whole it must have been a couple hundred pages, something like that. But I never published it or anything like that. I never like posted it anywhere, so you can't read it. But and that's partially because I'm like, I don't know. I feel like my resources might be better used literally just sharing the truth to people. Like people don't need to read about me. They need to read about the truth. It's
As you say that while we're interviewing you.
Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to take it back to Christ as much as possible. And I guess this is much faster than reading a like 5 or 6 part book.
Can you put your blog up in the private chat so then I can put a banner up and then everybody can just go and see it?
So how long have you been doing your blog, Stephen?
I've been doing my blog for that's a good question, actually. I don't remember. Let me see here. I'm actually checking the blog now.
Yeah, so you can just pop that up. Have you put it in private chat yet? And then people can go and have a read of your blog.
You're gonna have to boost up, Catherine, because I can't do it.
Oh, really? You don't have that power?
Nope. Go ahead, Stephen.
So March 24th was my first post to my blog. It was not like so what happened was I was kicked out of my house in like early 2022, I believe. Yeah, early 2022, like February of 2022. And when I got kicked out, I stole this this concordant literal Bible. We were talking about how I'm a klepto. There we go. No. So I stole that, and I stole the concordant commentary by Enoch. That was something that I had really started studying over COVID. God really had me dive into First Thessalonians and Galatians. Those 2 letters for me were like the big ones, because that was the one that really dropped the bomb on what our expectation is, which, you know, the snatching away was something that fascinated me, like with the eons and stuff, because I was like, well, there's definitely going to be a revelation thing here, and I don't want to deal with that. So like, what's happening here? And God said, well, you're not going to believe this, but like First Thessalonians, here we have this chapter that says you're going to be snatched away. You're literally going to be taken out of this world right before that indignation begins. It's like, wow. So that was good news. So dealing with that for the first time was great. And then on top of that, then he moved me into Galatians, which I took notes from Enoch, and I started going through each verse and commenting on it and writing down, trying to narrate what I thought of it. And I didn't want to type it out, because I wanted to write it and really make sure that I'm thinking about each thing that I read. So I'm writing it out, and I realized, oh, so the law, the morality of the world is literally just not how God operates. He's focused on love, and if you're in love, you can't really go wrong. That's why you're considered holy and flawless in his sight as a believer. It's amazing. So I realized I really came to grips with justification by reading Galatians. It helped me really understand. It was perfect. And from there, you know, like as I said, as I got kicked out, it was maybe like a half a year later or something like that. I wanted to finally start writing on scripture itself. So I had after I got kicked out, I got a girlfriend, and her name is Jada. She is a lovely woman. She's very sweet. She was very nice. She and I started dating in like April of last year, and we dated until March of this year. And she was she was a Christian. I remember this so clearly. We were. I think I have told you guys this story too, but I'll say it again for the interview thing. I was on I was working at a Texas Roadhouse at that time, and I said to her, or she came up to me one day. She was kind of like she was really short, so she's kind of like out of my vision. She's like right down here. It's like came up to me while I was putting in an order at the little computer, and she kind of like looks up at me. She goes, "Steven." I was like, yeah. She's like, do you believe in God? I was like, I do. And she said, oh, good. So you're not going to hell then?
Wow.
I was like, yeah, I really didn't know about that one. That's new to me. And she was like, you didn't know about hell? And
then that relationship just sailed.
it sailed because I told her, I kind of made a joke about it at that time, but then we talked about it again maybe a few days later, and she got off work while I was still sweeping my tables and stuff, and I said, look, I'm going to finish cleaning up my stuff here. I'm going to go do my back of house work, and while I'm doing that, I want you to find me 3 verses that unequivocally prove that hell is in the Bible, that hell is there, and that's where people will go if they don't behave themselves or something. She said, all right, bet. So she goes and does it while I'm sweeping the tables and doing shit. So I come back, go, did you find him? And she goes, yeah. So she shows me like Matthew 10 something. I think it's Matthew 10:28. And I go, let's look at a proper translation now. So we go over there and we find, oh, look at that. It's not hell, it's Gehenna. And she said, I don't know if I believe that. What's a Gehenna? I was like, well, funny story. So I look up the Vale of Hinnom in Google Maps, and I was like, Gehenna's a place. You can look it up. You could go take a plane trip to here tomorrow. And she was like, why is it translated hell? I was like, because religion uses fear to control. If it's a bad thing to the bad guy, if it's something that you would attribute to a Batman villain, then it's something that you probably shouldn't be worshiping. Just a thought. And sure enough, there's this thing called Scarecrow in Batman, like the Batman Begins guy. Yeah. That's religion, very much so. So don't sit there and tell me to worship that. And I told her that. I was like, look, Gehenna's a place. It's a place. And clearly, if you look at it like that, look at what Jesus is saying now. Look at where the bodies of victims during the kingdom will go. So I broke it down, and I broke down a couple of other ones. I think she pulled out 2 in Revelation. One was like the lake of fire. I was like, that's the second death. What is death? I asked her, very simple, what is death? And she was like, like not alive. I was like, look, you just did it. Like there, you got it right. Now don't assume that if you're not alive, you're somehow still alive. You're dead. It's death. It's a curse. God said it was a curse in Genesis 3, so it's done. Mm-hmm. So first she was blown away that I knew what I knew. So she fell for me immediately. Like we had a great time, and she was we dated again for like a year. She slowly but surely came to realize the truth.
Wow.
And yeah, she learned through me just sitting down and showing it to her. There were 2 big things that really hit her after she realized hell was bullshit. It was Acts 17:24, which points out that God's not in temples. He's not in temples made by hands. And then the other one, which was, she was looking at her King James and she was like, this says might a lot. God might do this. God might do that. I was like, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because God's kind of powerful. She was like, yeah, I didn't know he was like a might kind of guy. I didn't know he might do something. It's like, that's one of the most profound things I've ever heard anyone say. That was amazing. Perfect. Thank you. So we dated for like a year, and that was great. And it was during that time that I started going through the book of Romans with her. And as I went through it with her, and we were really taking our time, I started writing down notes, similar to how I did with Galatians a while back with Enoch. And I did it here with Romans. I was like, okay, write comments. And on 16 chapters, I ended up writing like 160 pages on Romans. On Romans.
Wow.
Immediately, I wanted to send it to someone who knew what they were talking about. So I emailed it to Martin, and I was like, Martin, can you see if this makes any sort of sense? You don't have to read the whole thing, I guess, but like just any of it. If you find something that doesn't make sense, please let me know. And he said, he sent me back an email. I didn't know if he would actually email me back, but he sent me back one. He said, this is fantastic. This is amazing. Like this right here. I mean, this is just, you broke everything down really well. It was easy to read. You don't sound crazy. You don't sound like a lunatic.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, that's nice.
Is that on your blog, or is there any way people can see that? What you've written?
So I am doing a series right now on Romans, which is kind of like an expanded version of that series. It used to be 160 pages. Now, in my Word documents here, it's closer to 300 something. If this will load, yeah. So it's 320 now. So yeah, so it is a lot. It's more than double the size of what I was doing. So yeah, it's huge, but it was fun. It's I love doing it. I've loved writing now these things for and in and with Christ for the past year, and it's just been. I've loved posting it. I know not too many people even see it because most people don't read anymore. Now it's more like videos.
Yeah.
So I post it anyway because I'm a writer at heart, but that's where the heart of my work really is. And I know I did like a series like toward the middle of this year, which was like the pre-existence of Christ, but honestly, I really like the Romans thing more. I wish that people would have paid attention to the Romans thing more than the pre-existence thing, because the pre-existence thing, it's literally designed so that not everyone will get it. It's written that way. But Romans is like the basics for all the believers to come to an understanding of. That's something that I love commenting on. I love reading about. I'm using I use Martin's ZWTF series kind of as a platform for a lot of my understanding. But then, Enoch wrote some stuff, and so did Dean Huff, and so did George Rogers. And so I'm just like going through their stuff, and it has caused me to write a lot more on Romans. And I'm just going to go through the Evangel, and that's just what I've been up to now. I mean, I love it.
And it takes your mind off things, because this world sucks. And that's your therapy. That's your therapy. That's your, you can just sit down, you can take your mind off the world and focus on Romans, and then you can go into 1 Corinthians and all the way through the Evangel,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just been, it's been great. Like, and on top of that, I've gotten to, especially over the last year, I've gotten to meet a ton of people in Christ. And I didn't even realize just how many it was until Caleb asked me yesterday. He said, how many believers you have in your phone, Steve? I was like, oh my God. And I counted, and I have Martin, I have Seth, I have Simon Martin, I have Fred, I have Liam, I have Michael Knotts, I have Adam, I have Peter May is on there, I have Norm, I have Jason, I have I can't even remember them all off the top of my freaking head. There's just so many. Yeah, there's there's still Rhonda and Donna, and now on email, and Catherine on email. I should get your guys' numbers. It's probably easier that way. I have of course my brother, my mother, who I did reconnect with, by the way, in the past. When I got kicked out, I did reconnect with her, and
that's awesome.
yeah, so it's not like a total like tragedy type of thing. Like she has talked to me. I even got to see her again at the conference, and we have been like rebuilding our relationship. And it's
Was
been,
that this conference that just happened?
yep, she was
Wow.
there. Yeah, so she got to be there, and we've done a few things together. We're working on becoming state nationals right now, which I can't talk about on YouTube or they'll cancel me. But
Yeah.
I can say that we also like we helped Martin like write or help Martin with his book here, this Christianity's Final Solution.
Oh, well,
We helped him, we helped him edit it.
this one.
Yes, you got it. Good, Liam.
It was Mark. It was Mark that sent me just a bunch of them yesterday.
Good.
Mark Hawkins. He sent me like 8 of Martin's books. So
Oh,
great stuff.
Mark's talk was so good. Yeah. Catherine, do you have one?
No.
If you email me your address, I'll send you one because it's awesome. Or I could just show you every page right now, and you can just pause it. Oh yeah, no, it's yeah. We helped a little bit with like editing and mistakes on that one, but
That's cool. Good stuff.
yeah, it was really cool. It was really nice, and so yeah, we've built our relationship up again in the past few years. It's been for the year. It's been good.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your stories. It's been awesome. And if anybody wants to come and talk to Stephen in the after chat, I'll post the link up and we'll be here for like 10, 15. And yeah. Thanks,
Stephen has had an awesome life, even though that he's only, 21 or 22 now? Yeah, you've lived an awesome life. Awesome.
Yeah, it's been very kind of God to allow me to know any of this. I mean, honestly, and it's the same with everybody in Christ.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up. And love,
awesome.
grace, and peace. I can't do a heart. Liam's better at it than me.
The eyes of your heart haven't been enlightened. Love, grace, and peace to all of you.
Love, grace, and
We
peace.
will be out
everyone.
here soon.